Hello and welcome to another episode of Chekpoint, the podcast highlighting and telling the stories of influential leaders in and around the sports industry. Today, we are excited to welcome our next guest, Jarrod Barnes, to the show. Jarrod is currently the manager of former player marketing and services for the LA Rams and is passionate about all aspects of the sports community. He played his college football at The Ohio State University and has had multiple stops on his journey, both as a coach and administrator, and also as an entrepreneur, where he started Prime U before landing in LA. He is also the co-founder of The Lab, which is a Slack community designed for athlete development professionals across all levels of sports who are looking to collaborate, network, and grow. He now finds himself at the intersection of business, sports, and technology, and is highly regarded in the industry and is helping shape the future of sports as we know it. Jarrod currently lives out in LA and is busy getting ready for week 1 against the Cowboys. But for the next 45 minutes, he's here with us on Chekpoint. Jarrod, welcome to the show, my man. How you doing this morning?
Scott, I am well. Thank you so much for having me. Man, I'm humbled. That was probably the coolest intro to a podcast I've ever heard. So, man, excited to jump into the conversation today.
Man, I tell you, we're slowly getting 1% better each time we get on here. So I appreciate that. And, for all you first-time listeners, we're going to take this time to really use this as a checkpoint, right? So we're going to hear Jarrod's story on how he landed in LA, what they're currently working on over there, because God knows we are in a crazy world with sports right now. And with all his acute knowledge, where he sees the industry going, over the next 3 to 5 years. So Jarrod, we got a lot to unpack today. What's your story, man? How did you end up in LA?
It's been a journey, right? And I'll give you a quick synopsis. I'm originally from the Midwest. Grew up in Columbus, Ohio. So grew up in a very much a blue collar family. And that's something I've kept with me to this day, even though I'm in LA. Football was a huge part of my life growing up. I started playing the game at 6 years old, ended up having the opportunity, like you said, to play at Ohio State. And being from Columbus, to play at a place like Ohio State was truly special. Was incredibly humbled to be a part of a program of that caliber, to be around some of the best athletes, right? Even that are playing in the NFL today, to be around some of the best coaches to ever coach the game. I had a chance to play for, and then ended up working for Urban Meyer, Greg Schiano, Kerry Combs, some incredible coaches, and was just so grateful and blessed to be exposed to that at a young age and use sport as a vehicle to learn, sport as a vehicle to gain access to things that I don't know if I would have been able to gain access to otherwise. And so, looking back on my athletic experience, I'm incredibly grateful, incredibly proud, because it was a journey. I started my career as a walk-on, was pretty much a human tackling dummy my first couple of years, and then had the opportunity to really compete and go play, and ended up being put on scholarship. And so it was just an incredible journey. From an athletic standpoint, and then ended up pursuing the NFL. Didn't make an active roster, so went back and spent about almost a year and a half as a coach, and worked at Ohio State as an intern coach, and then went down to Clemson University and worked in administration there in their student athlete development department. And again, just grateful to be exposed to another program of that caliber in Clemson athletics and see things done a little bit differently. Being from the Midwest and then going down to the state of South Carolina, that was different.
A little different now.
A little different, but good, right? Because I think we are the sum total of our experiences, and so I'm grateful to have been exposed, right, and just continue to explore. And I think one thing about my journey is I've never allowed resource to determine my imagination or determine my creativity. And I think that's been a huge driver and fuel that in a sense allowed me to gain access to this opportunity here with the Rams, and been with the organization for almost a year and a half now. And as you mentioned, oversee our former player services department, really helping connect all of our alumni back to the organization, but also from a business standpoint, making sure we're storytelling our history through our media marketing and content channels. So it has been a journey, to say the least, but man, special, and continuing along.
Man, what a decorated journey, right? Like, I mean, you talk about the 1% of folks that get to go and play collegiate sports, and then, where you have found yourself was just under some of the best leaders and coaches that, the game has arguably seen, right? I mean, you could put them up there with anybody. And so I'm curious, as we're going through some of these uncharted waters, we like to think that athletes have the tenacity or they have the skill set. Were there any pivotal moments when you were, working with Coach Meyer or playing, that walk-on journey that really stick out that you lean back on, as we're still, navigating the waters today?
It's a great question. I would say I had a number of defining moments in my athletic career. I think one that sticks out to me the most, it was 2015. I was at the time, I was a junior, redshirt junior at the time, and I was competing my butt off, man, just to have a chance to play. Ended up having an opportunity to play on it was a primetime game, nationally televised. It was actually against Rutgers University. And this is the moment I think I'd really been working for my entire career, especially coming from a walk-on, not necessarily even having an opportunity to get reps in practice to now have an opportunity to not only play, but really play in a game. It was a huge moment for me personally. And man, I'll be honest, on my second play, I ended up giving up a touchdown on a double move. On national TV, and I was sick to my stomach, man. Absolutely just wanted to, I don't even know if I can describe the disappointment or the pain to where you work so hard for something for so long, and then you feel like you finally have that chance and you blow it, and then blow it on national TV. And the day after the game, I was so ashamed that I even started packing up my locker. And I was like, you know what, like I'm going to turn my stuff in. I'm done. I had my chance and I blew it. And one of my teammates who I highly regard and still have a ton of respect for to this day is Von Bell. Von Bell, he's a safety, played for a long time for the Saints. Now he's with the Cincinnati Bengals. Yep. And he was a close teammate, actually a roommate of mine in training camp. And he grabbed me by my shoulder, my shirt right here, and he yanked me and he said, "Jarrod, what are you doing?" And I said, "Man, I'm going to turn in my equipment. I think this isn't it for me. I'm going to give up." And he was like, "You're too talented. You've come too far to stop now." And at the time, I didn't realize it, but that actually changed the entire trajectory, not only of my football career, but I would say of my life, because that was really one of the first times where, I faced adversity, in relationships and family, personally, but from a football standpoint, just because I think you understand as an athlete, you have so much equity. You put so much into it. That really changed the trajectory of my mindset and ultimately my resilience. And I'm incredibly grateful for Von to step in when he didn't have to, right? And so I think for me, what I take from that experience, not only to develop my resilience, but to have an eye for those opportunities where you can stand in the gap for someone else, to really take a stand. And I think to transition into what's happening now in today's landscape, right? You're seeing a lot of athletes take a stand and stand in the gap for those who may not be able to, right? Or may not have the opportunity. And those who have the platform and have the influence are now doing that. And it makes me incredibly proud, but also incredibly motivated to continue that myself and to continue to inspire others to do the same. So long-winded story, man, but I think it's a powerful analogy that I'm incredibly grateful for Von for doing that for me, but also I know it's changed the way I think moving forward.
Man, I mean, there's so much to unpack there, and I mean, the relevance of that experience and going through that, and I think where we're seeing a lot of through line with a lot of our guests that are successful in this industry that are forward thinking is, hey, failure is going to happen, right? And right, so I think in athletics, and Von, may have just pushed the needle even further for you here, but fail forward. Jarrod, you're gonna make mistakes, right? We're all gonna make mistakes as humans, as organizations, as society. That's okay, but we have to be able to fail forward. And I think that's something that we're starting to embrace. We're starting to talk about more, and it's really interesting to hear when you have it in a sports a sports environment, how parallel it is to the real world of what we're experiencing right now. So really interesting story there. Goodness, and there's let's keep going. So you have this decorated sports background. You find yourself in admissions, coaching, giving back to the game. Where did Prime U come from? Talk to me about how you transitioned all of these intangibles into an entrepreneurial venture now.
No, it's a great question, Scott. I'll be honest, Prime U it was an incredible journey and something I actually started while I was a student athlete.
Oh, wow.
And so it was actually 2013. I had attended a conference in Louisville, Kentucky. It's called Athletes and Social Change. And I'm very big on just continuing to expose yourself to new perspectives. And that was something that skill I developed at a young age. And so I was 19 at the time, and I went to this conference called Athletes and Social Change and started listening to other speakers, other notable athletes, share their story and share how at the time, back in 2013, they were creating social change, and they were impacting people through their platform. And I think that was when the wheel started to turn for me, because this was really before, I would say, a number of athletes were speaking out. This is pre, Colin Kaepernick kneeling, right? So this is before a lot of these platforms now that are somewhat normalized were kind of in effect. And so it was a newer concept for me, and something that I knew. I didn't know exactly what it would look like, but I knew, okay, one day I want to be able to contribute to that and help others build their platforms, right, at a very foundational level. Fast forward 4 years later, right? It's 2000. At the end of 2017, beginning in 2018, right? I had a number of experiences, not only as an athlete, as a coach, and then working in administration, and really felt and looked myself in the mirror. I said, hey, Jarrod, like, either you're going to take this leap and you're going to apply all of these ideas, all of these experiences, all of these thoughts and dreams that you spend hours writing down on paper. Either you're gonna act on those or you're not. Right. So it was a really kind of a go left or go right moment. And I was very young, didn't necessarily come from an MBA or didn't come from a heavy finance background. So a lot of these passions I had were just passions, right? I didn't necessarily have the formal training, but what I did have is that willingness to learn and the desire to take the leap. And so I took the leap, and in a sense, had the opportunity to build a leadership development platform, work with a number of teams across college sports, across high school sports, and even a number of pro teams as well, and actually build out our team at Prime U. At the time, at our peak, we were a team of 7. And so it's just an incredible opportunity to learn and kind of be in trench warfare, man, where you're learning as you go, right? It was, in a sense, my own real life MBA to not only launch a company, but build it and scale it and grow it to about 35 different accounts. And so it pushed me to have really fast and frequent feedback loops, number one, and it pushed me to grow and evolve at the rate as the business was as well. Because as well as anyone, as an entrepreneur, your business is only as good as you are, in a sense. Yep. Especially in the early stages before you get kind of systems, structure, and scale. And so it was and just an incredible opportunity for me to put myself out there, to swing, to in a sense, to transition back to my playing days, to just go, to just kind of put your foot in the ground and just go. Granted, looking back, I have hindsight's 2020, and so you learn so much from the pursuit, but it really was the process that I think I benefited the most from. But not only myself, right? It was never really about me. I think my entire desire to launch Prime U is that I wanted to help people so deeply, but I wanted to do it in a way that was authentic to me. Right. I think if there's one thing I could say about my experience at Prime U is that I wanted to remain authentic to myself, and do it in a way that I felt I could use my gifts and talents the best. And so it was an incredible learning experience. I had a chance to meet so many different people across the industry, in a sense, build something truly special. And I'm incredibly grateful for it. And, ironically, the Rams were one of our clients. And so that's really what allowed the relationship to foster there. And then, lo and behold, the opportunity pops up. And next thing you know, I'm living in LA and been with the organization since.
Man, that is that's incredible, Jarrod. And you think, I want to just go back just a little bit and you talk about taking a leap, right? And, in the earlier segment, you talked about perspective and you talked about traveling and you talked about, moving from the Midwest to South Carolina and what that's like. And I think one thing that I'm picking up with you is like, you've become so relatable to races, to colors, to generations that, man, you haven't limited yourself to anything. And so now you can tell the story and be relatable to so many folks here in this country, in this world, which I think is so powerful. And we're seeing that more and more in leaders coming up, which is man, it's just so cool. And, I can relate. We took a leap of faith, went out on a 5-month road trip last year, did 20,000 miles completely off the grid. And it's amazing when you take a leap and you start building for yourself and you have that authentic voice, how some of these other problems that, I experienced in the daily grind where I was trying to conform, they just sort of wither away and you start dealing with new problems. You're able to gain capacity to help others. And so really interesting to hear, sort of what led up to this position with the Rams and all the experiences that you were able to accumulate along the way. So now that we have a little taste of who you are and your journey to get here, let's talk about the NFL, because we got, man, you guys are opening up this week in a stadium that is the most expensive thing that I've ever seen with no fans. What has this experience been like, acutely to this off season and, starting to navigate post or former players within this, environment?
Yeah, first, I think just as it relates to the stadium, I'm humbled, right? I want to make sure to articulate this well. There has been hundreds, if not thousands of people who have worked on the SoFi Stadium as a project over the past 6 years, from our owner, Stan Kroenke, and his vision in bringing this to life, to the initial ribbon cutting ceremony in 2016, all the way to the ribbon cutting ceremony that took place earlier this week in 2020. An immense amount of people. And, I've just been incredibly blessed to be a part of it for the last year and a half. But there's been so many people who have contributed to this vision and this experience. And in a sense, this movement that is SoFi Stadium, and it's going to become not only a stadium, but an entertainment district. And, you think about what it looks like to open now in the midst of not only COVID, but in the midst of social unrest. It's truly a unique time. But I think what makes it so special is when you think about stadiums and when you think about why sports are so great, is that they bring people of all backgrounds together around a common experience. It's really a social conduit or a great way to transcend culture, transcend barriers, transcend whatever it is you want to transcend, right? Sport, you think about sport, politics, and religion. Those are the universal languages in our world, right? And we have the opportunity to have a stake in one of those. And honestly, by the way the organization has taken a stand, just as it relates to social injustice, has been incredibly powerful, and actually had the chance to now take a stand in two of those universal languages, right? And connects people of all backgrounds. And so it's, like I said, been incredibly humbling because, I'm certainly a contributor, but I want to make note that there are hundreds of people working not only on behalf of the Rams, but of SoFi Stadium, LA County, right? This is a cross functional effort here that has been a massive undertaking, but also will produce a massive impact in the years to come. And so we're excited about it. Is it different than I think we anticipated? Absolutely. And I know we've planned a number of contingency plans on what that looks like to welcome fans when it's safe, when it's feasible.
Yep.
But to date, we're not going to let that take away from what the opportunity is, and still be incredibly proud, incredibly excited about opening the stadium tomorrow evening, actually, and hopefully beating the Dallas Cowboys while we're at it.
Man, shout out to my former teammate Jarrod Everett. We're going to be tuning in, watching you guys. Hopefully take it to America's team, because I'm just not a fan of the Cowboys, and I'm going to say that publicly. So that's what we're doing. Really cool. And now, coming back to your experience with these guys, right? So you have the Rams legend community. You guys had all these events leading up to it, and, coming from your Ohio State days where you've met that adversity, you overcame it. Man, you guys had things planned for this community that, I was getting excited listening to it. Dodgers games, Isaac Bruce into the Hall of Fame. How have, over the last few months, you've taken those experiences that were set in stone and evolved them to make sure that people are still staying engaged, in this current environment?
No, it's a great question, right? And you think about, in terms of athlete engagement, that's had to evolve, I guess, faster than it ever has before, right? Because the industry was primarily event-based, right? You get people in a room, that's what brings people together. You get a bunch of athletes together. You could have kind of your standard speaker series. You could do different events, as you had mentioned, right? That really build and enhance community. So had to take a step back and really rethink, number one, what does it what does engagement look like now in 2020? What does support look like now in 2020, given everything going on? And then, most importantly, what does a community and sense of belonging look and feel like in 2020, right? So not only from an engagement standpoint and kind of communication, now we're getting people together, but in addition to, being safe and healthy and everything and making sure people feel supported, but then also too, making sure that there is a strong sense of community as well. It's presented a number of challenges. I'll be honest with you. It challenged myself, and I'm willing to bet a number of people across the industry as well. But one of the things I'm incredibly proud of that we've been able to do as an organization is maintain that connection. And we've actually, not sure if you're familiar, but Kyle Muma, the founder and CEO of NextPlay, we've been able to utilize his app to actually build out a Rams Legends community app that is served, in a sense, as our closed network, right? That has allowed us to keep our guys not only informed, but engaged, right? And the NFL CBA passed earlier this year in April. And while, there's a lot of coverage around it from today's players' contracts, it actually greatly has a tremendous influence and impact on former players and what their benefit structure looks like. And so that was a huge push for us, is making sure everyone's aware of their benefits and what's available to them. Because, life as an NFL player, it's certainly, there is so much that comes with it, but there's also, there's a lot of challenges that come with it as well. And so, for my role as someone in my seat across the league, right, every team has either a team or a number of representatives who work on behalf of former players, in addition to the NFLPA, in addition to the NFL's former player services and retired player services, right? We are all rallying together to make sure that our former players are supported, that they're informed, right? Because what happens is when you leave that locker room, and this, Scott, when you leave that locker room, that community, that support, that communication, it's a pretty steep drop off, right? It is boom, and it's like, wow, I'm now in the real world. I'm in a different environment, right? So in a virtual world, you have to over-index on that communication, over-index on that support. Call in for no other reason than just to call and check in. Right. Don't necessarily have the opportunity or the luxury just yet to gather in person. But in the interim, doing different things virtually, but most importantly, keeping up the communication and making sure everyone feels supported, engaged, and that sense of community is still there. I think it's absolutely critical to maintain that, because if you think about, what the world really needs right now and why people are gravitating so heavily towards sport, is that sport gives people hope. Right. And community gives people hope. Connection gives people hope. Right. So I think, again, it's been humbling for someone in my role. It's I think about how can I give our community a sense of hope today? What does that look like? And it's a big question, but to break it down on a granular level, it could be as simple as giving someone a phone call, or, a larger scale of like, hey, let's organize this virtual event. We got a watch party going on tomorrow. We're going to be watching the game just over YouTube TV, catching, the Rams play the Cowboys there, but making sure guys feel included in the process. That's so, so important.
Amazing. And one thing that you've done as a co-founder of the lab is you not only talk the talk, but you walk the walk. And shout out to Kyle Muma. I know he's a member in the athlete development lab. And, we're going to come back and touch on that, because we're going to unpack that whole environment which you've created that is really changing the landscape of sport. But, before we move on from this engagement piece, one thing that I wanted to specifically ask you was, as we see name, image, and likeness starting to come on the landscape for athletes developing their online brand, earlier and earlier, do you think that that's going to change the behavior and drive more player engagement as these athletes are going to be now accustomed to doing this, way earlier in their career? Or how do you see that iteration of the law changing what you guys currently, face right now with trying to get these players engaged after they finish and hang up the cleats?
It's a great question. And this statement may sound crazy, but I think despite all of the challenges that have been placed in front of us, I actually think what has happened and how the industry has evolved is a blessing, because, when name, image, and likeness comes into effect, support is going to look different. the conversations are going to look different. Engagement itself is going to look different because there's going to be another set of layers and another set of stakeholders involved in the conversation now, where before typically the key stakeholders in the athlete lifestyle, at least at the collegiate level, are, the coach, athletic trainer, maybe a professor, academic advisor, your parents, right? And, outside of that, those are some pretty influential key stakeholders. Yep. But now what's going to happen, in addition to those, you're going to start to have brands come in as key stakeholders. You're going to start to have agents come in as key stakeholders. You may have even their own, athletes will form their own LLC and have potentially even employees or other individuals, right? The number of key stakeholders is going to increase. Yep. Right. So with that, the amount of support must increase with it, or that's when I think problems are going to start to arise. And it's a tremendous opportunity, no doubt about it. So I want to make sure to lead with that. But I think as we think about the evolution of sport, as the evolution, as the definition of what it means to be a student athlete evolves, right? The definition of student athlete support is going to evolve with it as well. And it's going to be really unique, right? I think it's tremendously impactful and certainly an incredible amount of upside for student athletes to monetize their name, image, likeness, and their brand and be able to benefit from that. But, me, myself being at the professional level and seeing the pros, but also the challenges and unique scenarios that come with that, I think there's going to be a needed added layer of support as well. Yeah. And so it is very interesting as it relates to the athlete. And I think one of the things that no one is talking about, and you alluded to it earlier, just as we were catching up before the show, and Dak Prescott, coming out and sharing his battles with mental health, which I greatly admire his courage for. I think you're going to start to see more and more student athletes be vocal about mental health, because if you think about it, if you're now sponsored, if I'm 19 years old, I'm a student athlete at University of Alabama, just for example, and I'm now sponsored by Nike and a host of local car dealerships or a grocery store in Tuscaloosa. How much more pressure do I now feel when I'm competing? Or if I sprain my ankle and I'm out 2 weeks, what does that mean for my sponsorship? Right. I think you're going to start to see the pressure on the student athlete experience evolve. Right. You're going to start to see parents being more involved in the student athlete experience as well. So, again, incredible amount of upside, incredible amount of impact for both the athlete and the brands involved. Right. Me coming from a marketing perspective, but from a support perspective, I think that's also going to need to have some systems and structures in play to see that through.
Yep. And big shout out to one of our prior guests, Eric Cusin, who's running the hashtag Same Here movement, featuring CEOs and professional athletes, giving them a platform to say, hey, you know what? Like, we all go through this. And the more that we get entrenched in this game, and the earlier we get entrenched in this game, we have to break that stigma. And I think, Dak coming out, even though he's a little bit later in his career and he's established, it's still unbelievable to say, like, there's somebody that I see, that I look up to, that has this voice and platform. And if they're experiencing it, chances are that we are, down here as well. And so, I think that this is going to humanize the game, and it's not going to be shut up and dribble. It's not going to be the dumb jock. It's going to be, this is Jarrod Barnes, a human, a brand, an athlete, and we're going to start to create a more holistic version of this person, where an athlete is just one component of what makes them up as their brand. Now, with all that change, Jarrod, there's a ton of room for opportunity, innovation, and you, my friend, are pioneering the lab, which is just a culmination of all these thought leaders and, like-minded folks in the sports community. Why don't you tell the listeners sort of what that Slack channel looks like, why you created it, and some of the unique conversations that are coming out of there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I appreciate you bringing it up, and I agree with you. One, I want to backtrack a little bit. I agree with you that the athlete will now be much more holistic, right? Not that the student athlete wasn't before, but I think it presents a unique opportunity for athletes to redefine what's possible, right? And I think that's what gets me really excited about name, image, and likeness, and just the opportunity that it presents. But as it relates to the lab, I'll be honest. When COVID hit back in March, I think, like a lot of people, a lot of working professionals, just wanted to find ways to connect and kind of use this unique time well. right? I think for the first time in my life personally, I had a lot of downtime, and I'm like, man, what can we do with this time? How can we get better through this time? How can we benefit and help others through this time? And so, started a Slack channel. I shot a text to a few of my colleagues and said, hey, let's all jump in this Slack and, maybe have some dialogue. It's kind of a glorified group chat. And, organically, over a number of weeks and months, it grew, and almost at 300 members now at this point. So still a small group, but I think to your point, it's been incredibly impactful conversations, right? And I think one thing about sports, right, if you think about what the value that the lab presents, is that we bring perspectives from across the industry, perspectives from not just across sport, but those who have influence on sport as well, right? You have a number of sports tech entrepreneurs. You have yourself. You have former athletes. You have professionals in sports business. And so it's been an incredible ecosystem, right, that we're building. And I think because it's been all organic and hadn't necessarily put any paid media behind it, I think that's also what's made it so special. We're still excited and definitely looking to grow it. And you probably will see some paid media coming here soon to kind of grow and scale it. But I think to date, right, it's I think reminded me and channeled my inner entrepreneurial roots, right, of just what it means to create, what it means to bring people together. And at the end of the day, all entrepreneurship is solving a problem, right? So, I think our intent at the launch of the lab was to bring people together, right? Those who are just looking to connect, looking exactly like you opened up with, right? Like looking to collaborate, network, and grow throughout their career. And so it's been special. It has been an incredibly special ecosystem that we're really excited about and definitely continue to grow.
Man, I have to thank you because, as Chek, we are coming in and modernizing the way, funds are distributed, right? Whether that's per diem for recruiting or on road trips. We're doing a multitude of things, and it was an unbelievable channel for us to come in, tell our story, and not only tell our story, but learn what other new innovative platforms, where the industry is really going, right? So the next plays of the world, or the sports finders, or the MBAs that are coming out of Stanford and UCLA that have a really unique perspective of where this industry is going. So as a current member, thank you and Bryce Only and everybody for putting that together. For all you listeners, we're going to go ahead and post the link to the lab. If you have the slightest inkling about sports, what's going on from in the back office to what's happening on the field, highly recommend you guys join that. So Jarrod, as we start to look to the future, right, we'll use the lab and some of that forward-facing technology and conversation. Where do you see the sports world going over the next 3 to 5 years? And I know that's really broad, so feel free to narrow that down to your lens. But what are some of the big things that we should be on the lookout for?
That is an intriguing and exciting question, and almost an intimidating question as well, because there are so many different verticals, sport, as the industry continues to grow and the market continues to grow as well. I think to hone in on a couple of different verticals, right? And I'll speak to the fan engagement vertical, and then maybe to the athlete development vertical as well, just to kind of hone in on what that looks like. I think the fan engagement vertical, and we alluded to it, name, image, and likeness, right? But I think as sport continues to evolve, as will avid fandom, and what that means, and how people are seeking out their favorite athletes, how people are seeking out sports content, as you're seeing a number of these OTT platforms pop up, as people seek out ways to support their favorite player or team, and new avenues in e-commerce and merchandise, right? You're seeing fans lean into becoming more and more avid in the future. And so it is really unique to see the influence of sport continue to grow and deepen its roots, even in markets where, traditionally you think about, these small market or small towns, large markets like a Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Clemson, South Carolina, a College Station, Texas. Those fans are becoming more and more avid, and the roots are becoming deeper, but also the scale of that is becoming more broad, right? You're seeing a sport have a more global footprint. You're seeing casual fans become more avid fans and lean into sport, because sport, again, as we alluded to earlier, is transcending multiple languages and barriers that it hasn't in the past. And so you're seeing those casual fans, come across a tweet or certain things, and on social media, and like now beginning to lean in more and more.
Yeah.
And so it's very unique. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to start to see both the influence of college sports and major sport leagues like the NFL, NBA, and MLS continue to grow. Continue to expand and have a more global footprint, but also have a deeper footprint here in the States. And I think to even hone in on that even more, you're going to start to see more personalization of fan engagement and what it means to experience a game, right? You know, who knows, maybe one day I may tune into a game like this and watch a live interview post game just on my computer, you know, queued up, right? There's so many different platforms, startups, and technology that is both emerging and innovation is continuing to spur on more and more. I can speak to the Rams. We actually just launched actually today it'll launch our virtual fan experience. It's an AR experience that you can actually go in and get 360 views of SoFi Stadium, right here in your living room, just on your phone, on a cloud link, right? So it's incredibly exciting to see that that's possible, right? Who even thought that was possible a number of years ago, where you're getting to see inside the locker room, on the field, feel that rush of running out of the tunnel, all on your phone, right? And so you're going to start to see that personalization more and more and more. And that's, again, why I think you're going to see these different audiences being connected and in a sense engaged. And you look at how esports is now transcending that as well. And you're seeing the NFL and traditional sports transition over into esports, right? So you're seeing these different crossovers. And again, I'm speaking at a very high level here and not getting into the granular, right? But I think just at a macro level, it's really interesting to see. And I think the last thing too, right, just as it relates to fan engagement is really the rise of women's sports, and something I have tremendous respect for. And, you know, even here in Los Angeles in our market, we've had Angel City FC make a huge announcement. And we're really excited about their franchise coming in 2022. But I think, again, the reach of sport is continuing to grow. Women's sports is being a trailblazer and catalyst for that. And so that is really, really exciting to see, because at the end of the day, it grows the level of influence. And then just to transition briefly to athlete development, and I get excited about this, man. So I apologize.
Hold on. Before you transition, man, did you ever think when you were playing football back in the early 2000s, you know, I graduated high school in 2009, played my ball, 10 to 14. Did you ever think that there would be an augmented reality experience of a stadium or putting on an Oculus virtual reality, like that was so dystopian. Like, I mean, at that point I was still trying to figure out my MySpace top 8 friends, and to think that like we're at the point of really going mainstream with AR and VR. And this is still just the tip of the iceberg. It's going to be really fun, Jarrod, to come back in a couple years and think about, man, this is what we were thinking. And then in 3 years, this is where we're at. And I think it's just going to be so much more than we could ever imagine. But that's definitely an interesting perspective on the fan side. Let's hear what you got for the athlete development, because I'm curious on that too.
And to just briefly say, right, the speed of innovation has dramatically accelerated and dramatically shifted, right? I think because of the consumer demand, if you're looking at it from a flywheel perspective, the consumer demand has generated that speed of innovation. That speed of innovation has generated more consumer demand, right? So it is kind of the chicken or the egg, but I think that's what makes it exciting. And then as it relates to athlete development, obviously fan engagement is becoming more personalized. Truly believe as will athlete development, right? You look at a number of startups, right? Home Court, another AI platform that you can individually train basketball, right? You can get coaching and feedback. You're seeing AI coaches, both in football and basketball begin to emerge. You're seeing Nike just launched their 11 online coaching platform that allows athletes to get feedback and submit videos as well. So you're seeing more and more personalization, right, of athlete development and training. Of what what elite performance looks like is becoming more and more specialized, right? So the support systems, as we alluded to earlier, are also becoming more and more specialized. And you're seeing, specialists rather than generalists, right? And I think that could go for kind of consumer trends in general, right? If you think about 10 years ago, you had a lot of individuals enter the workforce as a generalist, and they did a lot of things, where now you're seeing roles become more and more specialized and more niche focused to provide a specific service for a specific set of individuals. And I think that's where the field of athlete performance specifically, but also athlete development and engagement is going to go as well, in order to serve the needs of the needs that have been created, if that makes sense. So
it makes a ton of sense.
It's interesting to see, but also incredibly exciting.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, this for me, like listening to it is so exciting. But in that same vein, if we don't go back and lay a good foundation with mental health and financial literacy and have these pillars, then all of this excitement can just go so sideways. It could go the wrong way, where you don't know how to interact with technology and decompress and still be a human being. And so, you know, it's again that chicken or the egg. But I think that it is paramount that we start going into the nucleus and laying a solid foundation for these individuals that are going to be coming through this more evolved sports vacuum, so that they're able to go ahead and handle the pressure of, you know, earlier sports deals with agents and in interacting in a more specialized environment with technology. Because let's face it, this is all the unknown for us. But we do know that we can control our breathing. We can control certain aspects, that regardless of what situation we find ourselves in, whether it's in business or sport, you know, we can at least separate and be a human for a little bit, which I think for me is always finding that balance of, hell yeah, let's advance, but okay, let's not completely get rid of everything that's a human, because we watched Ex Machina last night and man, it's a little scary, but that's for another show, Jarrod. So really interesting insight. You know, as we start to wind down, this has been an incredible journey of your life, and I know we're just scratching the surface, but one of the questions we've been asking all of our guests is more personal. So we're going to take a step outside of your sports lane here. But, you know, Jarrod, if you could let the listeners know and tell them one thing that you've done in your life that you would recommend they do or experience in theirs, what would that be and why?
You know, it's a great question. And I think for me, we kind of talked about it earlier a little bit, just as it relates to perspective. And one of the things that I was incredibly blessed with is I had the opportunity to travel internationally, pre-COVID, of course, travel internationally a number of times. And I'll tell you what, I had a defining moment. I took 2 trips that really stood out to me. One was to Trinidad and Tobago, and the other one was to Tokyo, Japan. And both trips opened my eyes and allowed me to understand and, in a sense, be exposed to new perspectives, new cultures, new ways of life, and most importantly, new ways of thinking that I wasn't previously exposed to before. And I go to, you know, a place like Trinidad and Tobago, and I see be able to be a part of the island culture and see all that what that entails, and see them playing cricket and soccer, just, you know, with little to no equipment. Right. It was incredibly humbling, right? Coming from a place like Ohio State, where you pretty much have any need that you have, it's taken care of. Yeah. Right. And so to see that in a different context was incredibly humbling, and to come alongside Trinidadian people was one of my most favorite and special memories. But it's something that I carry very closely with me today. And then very similar, when I went to Tokyo, this is actually in 2017, as they were building towards the then 2020 Olympics, now 2021 Olympics, to see and experience a culture that had such a deep reverence for history, such a deep level of tradition, again, was incredibly humbling, right? I think America is an incredible country, right? But to go to a place like Japan and see just a different level of reverence for history, again, just to be exposed to that, was absolutely incredible. And so I share those 2 experiences. You know, I had a chance to travel to a number of different countries, but those 2 really stood out to me the most, because it shapes who you are. It shapes the lens in which you see the world. And now for me, you know, I'm grateful. Obviously, the NFL, there's an incredible platform around it, right? And it's an incredible opportunity that I've been blessed with. But I'm grateful for it because I've been able to see a wide range of perspectives, right, and bring that to the table. Where, you know, didn't necessarily go to an Ivy League school or anything of that nature, but I would say I've been blessed with real world education and exposure in that front. So if there's something I would encourage anyone to do, it would be to travel internationally, or not necessarily internationally, travel outside of your comfort zone. I'll say that because it might be a little bit hard to travel internationally now, but travel outside of your comfort zone. That could be anywhere from down the street to a new neighborhood that you haven't seen before, or it could be to a new country when it becomes safe. So those for me stood out, and I would say have a significant significant play in hand in who I am today.
That's awesome. And for all you listeners out there, I don't know if you believe it, but one of my foundation principles is that success leaves clues. And this human is beyond successful in so many different ways, making impacts in our community in so many different ways. And so, if you take anything away from today, it's take a leap and start compounding and building those confidence. And before you know it, you're going to be doing stuff that you didn't even think was possible. And on that note, Jarrod, we would love for you to let the listeners know how to get in touch with you, the lab, so that they can continue to, absorb the knowledge and content that you're putting out, each day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Feel free to check us out on the lab. It's thelabcommunity.com. And I'm a big email guy, so feel free to send me an email. It's Jarrod, Jarrod .Barnes, Barnes at thelabcommunity.com. I'll make sure I'll get back to you in 24, 48 hours, but always happy to have dialogue, conversation, but feel free to reach out anytime. And Scott, man, thank you for the opportunity to be on the show. I think you're doing what you're doing is phenomenal. This has been a phenomenal experience. So thanks again for having me.
Oh man, this is, and if it was good for you, then it was great for me. This was 45 minutes well spent. Jarrod Barnes with the LA Rams and the Athlete Development Lab. Thank you for coming on Chekpoint. And for all you listeners, until next time, check yourself.